And the thing that is so unnerving right now is there is a large segment of our leadership class, of our media, and I know this is left, but it's our media and our entertainment gurus, the guys who stand up at awards ceremonies and make speeches, and our universities that have lost the plot of American freedom. You know, but it's not everybody, and that's really important. I mean, that decision I mentioned yesterday, which the Supreme Court in an anonymous decision, a unanimous decision. It was 8-0 because Gorsuch wasn't there when the argument was made. But they basically said there was this Asian band that called themselves the Slants, and the government refused to copyright their name, to give them a patent on their name, because they said it was offensive. And this was also important to, I guess, the Washington Redskins, who had their copyright taken away for their name because they said it was offensive, and they were trying to hammer away at these free speech rights. And 8-0, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. The government doesn't have the right to censor speech. One of the arguments was that because it was a copyright, a government copyright, it was government speech, which can be regulated. But no, it's not true. And Sam Alito wrote the decision on one side, because they were divided in the reasons they said. No, he said, speech that demeans on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, age, disability, or any other similar ground is hateful, but the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express, quote, the thought that we hate, which is a quote from a classic 1929 dissent from Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. And Anthony Kennedy wrote, the danger of viewpoint discrimination is that the government is attempting to remove certain ideas or perspectives from a broader debate. That danger is all the greater if the ideas or perspectives are ones a particular audience might think offensive, at least at first hearing. To permit viewpoint discrimination in this context is to permit government censorship. And the thing is, it's about who decides, right? It's about who makes the decision. If nobody can make the decision, then all speech is free and all ideas get out there, and ideas have to win on the basis of their qualities. This, by the way, stands in opposition, because we're talking about how do you tell which way the trends are going. This stands in opposition to a Massachusetts case in which a young girl, I think she was like 17, Michelle Carter, was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in the 2014 death of her boyfriend, who killed himself by inhaling carbon monoxide in his pickup truck, okay? The judge came to this decision that she was guilty of involuntary manslaughter because, these are two troubled people, and he was 18 and she, I think, was 17. And, they were two troubled people, and the guy, Conrad Roy, said he was going to commit suicide, and she at first tried to talk him out of it, but then she started to convince him to go through with it, and he got into his pickup truck and he gassed himself with the carbon monoxide. Here is the judge explaining in part his reason for finding her guilty. This is Judge Lawrence.
Even though just several days before that, she had requested their phone numbers from Mr. Roy and had obtained them, and had opened a line of communication with Camden Roy on, I believe, July 10th, but just a few days before the events in question. She called no one. And finally, she did not issue a simple additional instruction: get out of the truck. Consequently, this court has found that the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Ms. Carter's actions, and also her failure to act, where she had a self-created duty to Mr. Roy since she had put him into that toxic environment, constituted each and all wanton and reckless conduct. And this court further finds that the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that said conduct caused the death of Mr. Roy.
Now, the problem with this, of course, is that it takes out the will of Mr. Roy, and that is the problem with a lot of arguments against free speech, is that you have a mind, you have a will, you can be convinced, you can act on your own. She did not. She did things that were really bad. He got out of the cab at one point and of the truck, and she said, get back in. These are things that obviously she can be held accountable for. but he did the deed. He was the one who made the decision. She acted recklessly and all that stuff, but she didn't kill him, and it's not manslaughter. I do not agree with this decision, and I hope it gets overturned. I think that this is what we're talking about. We're talking about this idea that we need to be kept safe from other people's thoughts, from other people's words and actions, and this whole notion that speech is violence, that speech is actually an action. There's some kinds of speech that are actions, like a promise or a threat, which are basically the same thing. I'm going to do, if you come and paint my house, I'm going to pay you $50. That's a promise, and that can be regulated so that if I don't follow through on that promise, I've broken the contract. If you don't pay me, your restaurant is going to go up in smoke. That's a threat. Those things can be regulated. But, for instance, we were talking yesterday about staging Julius Caesar with Donald Trump as Caesar. That is not the same thing. It can't be regulated. And this idea that we're so helpless that we all need to run to our safe spaces is nonsense. And let me